Chapter 8. My preliminary diagnosis would be acute coronary syndrome. After I had blurted that out, the bell signaling that the time's up rang out. I thanked the professors and a simulated patient in Thai style before hurrying out of the room. The next section of my exam was hinge joints. I went to take my seat on a chair provided by the examiners, waiting for the next section, which would also be the last section of the exam for me today at the next station. This is OSCE, a unique examination that most medical students at clinical level are familiar with, even though the test would make them quiver in terror every time its name reached their ears. The exam was divided into various stations. Each station contained tasks, which consisted of inquiring the simulated patient's medical background, performing physical examinations, prescribing a procedure, evaluating X-ray film, and various laboratory results, within the time frame for each task. When the time's up, the bell will ring as a signal to stop doing the test, then rotate through the next task. Many medical students detested OSCE exams, but for me, this was the most fun of all. Certainly more enjoyable than doing multiple choice questions. Needless to say, the test enabled a reliable assessment of the candidate's ability to apply clinical competence. After the exam was over, I dashed for my bag I left with the examiner, shrinking off my lab coat and unceremoniously putting it in my bag before rushing down the stairs. Today, I had a date with Chumpo, a student pharmacist who I was trying to approach. She agreed to come to dinner with me. A rendezvous point was at the door of the building at 4 p.m., but I was now half an hour late due to the protracted examination. I arrived at the first floor, crowded with people. My long stride carried me in my haste towards the destination. I saw Chumpo in a short lab coat standing at the door. She looked at the watch on her wrist with an intense look. Then I saw a man in a university uniform stepped up to talk to Chumpo. I suddenly halted in my tracks. The young college student was handsome, tall, and brawny. He seemed to have grown taller, but his hawk-eyed gaze remained familiar, even though more than 4 years had passed. Tar. What is he doing here? Chumpo gestured to her left. Tar bobbed his head in gratitude and walked in the direction Chumpo had pointed. I saw her eyes follow him for a long time until I tapped her from behind. Chumpo turned to me, a little startled. Hi there, Ban. Sorry I'm late. Just finished my exam. Oh, yeah, it's all right. I understand. Chumpo offered me a faint smile. Then let's find something to eat. I walked away with her. However, I noticed Chumpo's periodically attempt to glance back until we walked out of the front of the building. Chumpo and I talked to each other for another week and gradually grew apart until we no longer keep in touch, and I hadn't seen Tar again since that day. The corridor in front of me was dim and dark. The light above the ceiling flickered, and the corridor had gone pitch black sporadically because of it. The air around me had grown colder by the minute. My body felt heavy, immovable. Then, at the moment, I saw a silhouette of a man walking towards me. He was holding a gun in his right hand, the sound of his heels on the floor echoing throughout the area. Fear gradually crawled its way into my heart. The light on the ceiling shone down on the mysterious visitor's face, Tar's face. Suddenly, I felt like there was a rope looping around my neck. Before I could utter any sound, the ground below had suddenly vanished. I fell into the darkness below with the noose around my neck. I woke up with a jolt by an alarm on my cell phone. I quickly pushed the blanket aside and sat up on the bed, the early morning light streaming through the window. My chest was thumping, and I was sweating despite the cold temperature in the room. Realizing it was just a dream, I tried to breathe in and out slowly and rubbed my face to pull myself back to reality. Although I felt that I slept better than I had the other nights, I still had nightmares right before I was going to wake up. The dream felt so real, just like when I dreamed of the attacker injecting me with something when I was at the hospital. Why did I dream about Tar just now? I turned off the alarm on my smartphone and pulled myself out of the bed. After I had taken care of myself in the bathroom, I walked out of the shower with a towel around my waist out of habit. I hasted through the chill in the morning to open the wardrobe. The next thing I knew, I heard the sound of the bedroom door opening. "Ah!" I exclaimed, and used the wardrobe door as a cover. Luckily, the wardrobe was positioned vertically near the door. I can use the door of the wardrobe to hide my inappropriate exposure. "Sorry," Tan blurted out. I snatched a shirt from the hanger and put it on. "I know you are the owner of this house, but please knock next time." I berated him. "I'm sorry," Tan apologized. Well, at least he didn't just waltz in. "Just wanted to let you know that I'm preparing our breakfast downstairs. Don't forget to have it." "Thank you, but do you mind? I'm getting dressed right now." Okay. I heard the door close. Still, I poked my head out to look at the door distrustfully. Once I had no longer seen his presence in the room, I quickly dressed up, putting the gun, which was on the headboard, into my shoulder bag before walking downstairs. The familiar smell of food drifted into my nostrils. I made my way towards the dining table in the middle of the Western-styled kitchen. When my eyes fell on the breakfast, it became clear why the smell was so familiar. 7-Eleven's porridge? I watched as Tan poured hot porridge, recently removed from the microwave, into the bowl. "I have a cooking talent. I know how to press the start button on a microwave." Tan placed 2 bowls of porridge on the table. No wonder his kitchen looked so spotless. Luckily for Tan, I wasn't a picky eater. We sat down and had our breakfast together. "Don't tell me all you eat is frozen food," I asked. "I don't eat it that often. Usually I eat outside, or store some food from rustic markets at the threshold of the alley. But now I don't have any ration left in storage." A rustic market is a type of market that shouldn't be far from his house, since it was situated near the alley. Tan seemed to have trouble eating his steaming hot porridge. "You have a wound in your mouth. Why did you eat something hot?" I looked at the man in front of me. He looked endearing with his awkward movements, like a big little brother. "There's nothing else to eat except this." Tan dropped his spoon in the bowl like he had given up. "You don't have to look at me with such pity." I shook my head slowly, returning to the bowl. Tan stared at the smoky hot porridge, like he was waiting for it to cool down before eating it. "You'll be off to work, right?" "Yes." "Want me to drive you there?" "No, I'm good," I refused abruptly. "Don't you have better things to do than give me a ride?" "I do, but my class begins after school hours. Plus, I will stop by the temple near the hospital anyway. Also, it's for your safety, alright?" I remained silent for a while before shutting my eyes and sighed softly. "Suit yourself." "You know," Tan rested his chin on his hand, looking at me. "You rarely smile, Doc." I glanced at him. 2 of my acquaintances have disappeared, and I was attacked by someone twice in my own house. I doubt anyone could smile after all that. Finally, Tan got what he wanted, being my chauffeur. I instructed him to drop me off in front of the ER before stepping down the car and walking inside. The first thing I saw as soon as I entered was Faye, inquiring the patient's background by a hospital bed. "Faye!" I shouted her name so loud that the eyes of the nurses and patients alike were fixed on me. Faye turned to me and beamed. It was as if the whole world had lit up instantly. I walked straight to her, touching her shoulders and looking at her in disbelief. "Where were you yesterday? Why couldn't we contact you?" Faye looked uncomfortable at my questions. It's like she didn't want to tell me about it. A long sigh escaped my mouth. I'd never felt such relief in my entire life. I really wanted to know what had happened to Faye yesterday. Whatever it is, it might be helpful in my search for the killer. "Do you have anything you want to tell me?" I just realized that I was being downright rude, for Faye was in the middle of an examination. And on top of that, I had been forcing her to tell me what had happened despite her reluctance to do so. I turned to the patient on the bed apologetically. "We can talk later. I'm glad to see you're okay." I was about to turn on my heels, but Faye reached out to tug the hem of my sweater. I paused and turned my head to look at her. We can talk about it at noon." I nodded. "Okay, I will come to see you." I walked away to the small forensic examination room. All eyes of the ER nurses were on me, and they started to gossip. I tried to ignore them, walking straight into my examination room and sat down on the chair, with Tick, the nurse who was in charge of the forensic cases, in tow. Presume it must have been chaotic last night, Dr. Bunn? Tick asked. Yes, but when did Faye show up? Do you have any idea, Tick? A nurse on yesterday's afternoon shift told me Dr. Faye called the ER around 11 p.m. She had apologized for her absence because something had happened, but I know nothing about it. She said she wanted a leave absence for yesterday and will be resuming the morning shifts. The nurse who took Dr. Faye's call complained that she would have called you to tell you about Dr. Faye, but she couldn't reach your phone. The record of my phone number in the ER must have been the original one which had been stolen. Thank you, Tick. Tick crossed her arms eyeing me. Dr. Bunn, may I ask freely? Yeah? I looked up at the middle-aged nurse who returned my gaze with a fierce look. Dr. Bunn, are you aware of what all women have been saying about you? I think I do. I don't want a sweet woman like Dr. Faye to fall for a womanizer like you. Tick and I were quite close that we could talk about our personal lives with each other. However, this was the first time she had been straight with me about this matter. Last year, you dated Kay, only for a short time, and then you were off chasing other women. If you're not looking for something serious, then let Dr. Faye go, I beg you. I raised my hands and massaged my temples. So, Kay didn't tell anyone she was the one who ended our relationship, did she? I'm not looking for something serious with Faye. I'll leave her alone. Are you satisfied? Tick let out a smile, satisfied. Good. Accept your fate, since you decided to be a Casanova yourself. If I see you near Dr. Faye again, I'm gonna spank you. She handed me the patient chart. Shall I call the first patient inside? To avoid Tick's threat at noon, I nudged one hospital porter to tell Faye to meet me at the noodle shop in front of the hospital. I wanted to talk about what happened yesterday. The small physician sitting across me looked paler than usual, and after we had ordered our lunch, I decided to cut to the chase. What happened last night, Faye? Her shoulders slouched forward, a look of terror on her face. Yesterday at noon, 4 teenagers came to my house. It was a mistake opening the door, and they rushed in. She took a deep breath. They took my phone and wallet and called my older brother. The thing is, he owed some money to a loan shark. Hundreds and thousands, millions with interest. They told my brother to pay off the debt. Today, they're taking me their hostage. My brow furrowed as I mulled over Faye's story. I've known for a long time that my brother had borrowed money from loan sharks, but the creditors have never bothered me before. I have no idea why they came to me yesterday. Those teenagers turned off my phone and kept me until 9 p.m. Then they said their boss got the money from my brother. After that, they left the house with my phone and bag. I tried to call my brother, but I couldn't reach him. Maybe he doesn't want anyone to know where he is. Have you filed a complaint yet? I asked. The police have already noted in their records, and I have described those teenagers to them. The officer deduced that they belong in the same group of gangsters who ambush motorcyclists at night. The police will locate them. Teenagers who ambush motorcyclists at night? These youngsters had been working for the creditor, who suddenly ordered to keep Faye in her house even though he had never contacted her before. It was as if they intended to make it look like Faye had disappeared the day after I told Tan about Gingera. However, they only temporarily locked her in her house, not kidnapping her like Pert. But why? I didn't know whether or not both incidents that happened were linked, but I started to see some sort of jigsaw pieces, which were parts along the edges of the whole puzzle. The more suitable piece for assembling the next puzzle. Do you know who your brother's creditor is? Faye shook her head. I don't know. Probably one of the most powerful magnates. I leaned into the chair, trying to reorder pieces of information in my brain. I supposed I needed some time with myself to decide on the next step. Now, one thing for certain was that I was about to get involved with a big shot who had a vast array of connections. From the police to teenage thugs who ambushed the motorcyclists during the night. Suravit, the cow Tom Mud boy who was my patient, had encountered those teens once before. I think it's time to order more bundles of those sweets. Sorowit opened the door to the forensic room with a look of exhilaration on his face. He was still in his school uniform, a white shirt and khaki shorts. A bag of cow tum mud was in his hand, an insane amount, more than last time. With my arms folded and my legs crossed, I was waiting for him on the chair. "Hello, doctor." Sorowit put his palms together, endearingly greeting me. I raised my hand in kind. "Is your class over now? You're here so soon," I said, smiling at the boy. Sorowit scratched the back of his head bashfully. "Yeah, I went to go get cow tum mud ya ordered at the Ma house right away after school." I glanced at the bag in his hands. "I didn't order this much." "We're giving these away. Mom said it's 2-for-1 deal." Sorowit stammered. "Really? I thought you had a crush on me and wanted to stuff me with them." I still smiled at the boy. Sorowit's light complexion, which was a feature of the northern people, suddenly turned bright red. "Doctor, how about you put the bag down so we can sit and have a chat?" I pointed to a chair in front of me. Sorowit limped inside and took a seat, putting the bag down on the table. "How are you? Does the wound still hurt?" I took Sorowit's arm to inspect the wounds that had become dry. No, not anymore." The bashful blush was still burning on Sorowit's face. That's good." I looked at the bruises caused by the long, blunt object's impact on the boy's arms. "Can I ask you something? Do you know the person who hit you with the club that day?" The boy pondered. "Actually, I've got a pretty good idea who he was, but I didn't tell anyone, 'cause I feared he would beat me again." I straightened in my chair when he said he knew those teens, but he didn't tell anyone for fear of the misfortune at hand. "Can you tell me who the person was?" "I know one of them. He's my junior colleague from school, a bully. The guy's this close from being expelled. Rarely comes to classes, sort of. But I don't know the other 3. I nodded. "Do you know who they are working for? Like, is there a big boss in the gang?" Sorowit shook his head. "I wouldn't know about this, but there should be, 'cause people fear them. One of my buddies said that the cops do nothing no matter what they did. Always let them go." "Ah, I see. How unfortunate for people around here. I've also had many patients who had been waylaid during the night as well. You ought to be careful, Sorowit." I reached out to touch the boy's thigh. Sorowit gave a start. "If you know something more about the gang, please tell me. As you know, I have encountered many similar cases. I want my patients to be careful." Sorowit smiled broadly. He seemed happy. "Sure, I'll ask my buddies if they know anything more about this." I marched out of the ER. The clock on the wall showed 4:45 p.m. As soon as I stepped out, I saw my chauffeur waiting near the bench in front of the room. His tall figure in a black shirt approached me. "Why are you working late today?" Tan was about to put his arm around my shoulder. "Let's go to the car." I sped up my strides, evading Tan's long arm, and he found nothing but empty space. "This is when I usually get off, but if you find it inconvenient, I will come by myself next time." Tan rushed to walk right beside me. "I thought you get off at 4. I have a class at 5. It's crunch time." Tan looked at his watch, a smartwatch at that, I noticed. Seems like this man had enough money to buy these essentials. "Do you want me to send you home, or will you come to the school with me?" "If I go to the school with you, where am I supposed to wait for you?" I blurted out. "I have a private office on the top floor. You can work there while waiting for me." Tan and I reached Tan's car that was blocking other cars. "I know you probably don't want to be alone at home." He wasn't exactly wrong. I had been trying to avoid being alone as much as possible for days. Tan unlocked the car and opened the door for me. I took in Tan's actions and frowned. "Tan, we need to talk about this." Tan gestured toward the car. "After you, doctor. We can talk about what you want inside." I reluctantly entered the car, with someone opening and closing the doors for me. Tan rounded the car and slid into the driver's seat. The man started the engine and drove out of the parking area. "Doc, what do you want to talk about?" I turned my eyes to Tan. "You are a straight guy, right?" Tan turned his head to me, a perplexed look on his face. Then he whipped his head back to the street. Of course, I'm straight. What kind of question is that? A straight man does not hold hands, does not hug, does not touch or open the door for another man. Tan smiled broadly. Oh, I can't? Or do you treat every man you know this way? Does anyone ever ask if you're gay? I started bombarding him with questions. I don't do this with everyone. I just felt like I wanted to do this for you, he deadpanned. And I'm not gay because I like girls. Why do his actions always contradict his word? Then stop treating me the same way you treat ladies. I don't like that. Remind me not to do it again if I get carried away. Sometimes my instincts just kick in. Never in my life did I have the urge to kick someone in the face. Never mind. What's done is done. Next time you do this, I'll definitely give you a piece of my mind. Tan chuckled. It won't do any good. You're stuck with me anyway. Tan stopped at the red light. I sighed in annoyance. I didn't go out to make any further investigation today. I don't know where to start. I thought it'd be best to put our heads together first. Do you have more information today? Yes, I do. I've got a lead. We'll talk about it after your class. Okay. Tan parked on the sidewalk, not far from the cram school's gate. I took in the sight of teenagers walking in and out in a flurry of activity, indicating the success of this place, and then turned my head to the man who owned this business. How did you manage to trick all of these kids? I didn't. They all came to me because of the failure of Thailand's education system. I was among the first generation of students to take Thailand's admission test. I understand what kids these days are going through. Tan stopped the engine. I take it you took the entrance exam? Lucky you. I opened the door. Yes, I took the entrance exam. You should keep it in mind that I'm older than you. Show some respect. I should learn more about Tan's background. Who knows? I might find something suspicious. You graduated with first-class honors in biochemistry. Why did you decide to run a cram school? Why don't you go to a grad school, publish a research, or become a college professor? I want to come back to my hometown. I have to take care of my mom. A mother? Tan said his mother would come over to his house once in a while. He stepped out of the car. Let's have this interview later. We got a lot of time to hang out, but I've got to run to my class now. Go to the 3rd floor, a white door on the right. You can use that room. And if you want to rummage through my stuff, please put them away after you're done. He got that right. I was definitely going to search his belongings. I guessed I shouldn't underestimate Tan's intelligence. This guy was smart, and that made him even more intimidating. I choose to trust Tan for now, but I needed to remind myself that there was the possibility that he may be somehow involved in Janjia's death. I sat at Tan's clean, tidy desk. Like his home, the office was spacious. Piles of paperwork were stacked neatly on the shelf. Not a single piece of paper out of place. On the opposite side of the room were a black velvet sofa and a coffee table. Taking in the sight, I could guess his personality traits were clean and neat. I turned to look at the showcase behind the desk, my eyes falling on his diploma, on which the words First Class Honors was declared. His graduation photos, his pictures he took together with a group of students who had enrolled in tutorial courses, were also there. Other than that, I didn't see anything else that could tell me more about his past. Since Tan already knew that I'd be rummaging through his things, I took the liberty of looking into the drawers of his desk. I found only some stationery, high school textbooks, handouts, and a biology and chemistry textbook written by Tan himself. My phone rang, and I fished it out from my pocket, looking at the name that appeared on the screen. Captain Aim. Yes, Aim? I quickly took the call. Hey, Dr. Bunn, you're good? It was Captain Aim's deep and sturdy voice. I knew the captain couldn't call me just for catching up. I'm fine. I'm just calling to ask you about the progress of Janjia's autopsy report. Will you be able to finish it on time, or do you need more time? I can finish it on time. I'd made my decision. I would submit the report within 7 days. Okay, at that time when you told me Janjia was murdered, you still insist on the presumption? Look, I couldn't find anything at all. No signs of intrusion that night. No signs of struggle. No signs of forced entry. No one saw anyone who seemed suspicious in the building. And the security cameras on the floor were all gone. The camera was non-functional, you say? I chuckled dryly. I wasn't sure if he could hear me. Yeah, why am I not surprised?
What do you mean, Dr. Bunn? What about the chemicals, drugs, or toxic substances in her blood, or any evidence indicating the manner of death?
All results were negative and no overdose. I trailed off for a moment. Aim?
Yeah.
I've been mulling this over. My speculation that said Jinja was strangled before she died might have been a misunderstanding.
What?
Captain Aim sounded startled by this.
So what's the deal here?
Her manner of death could have been a suicide. I was appalled after the words left my mouth. For the first time, I lied to Captain Aim. When Jane was about to die, she might have struggled until her neck tissue was severely injured.
Oh shit. Dr. Bunn, I believe your judgment. That's why I formed this freaking investigation team.
I heard an audible sigh.
Well done. Don't forget to note that on the report. I hope there won't be any problems.
Understood, I replied quietly. Then Captain Aim ended the call. Could it really be that easy? Too easy. Hadn't he noticed something was off at all? Or is he also a part of this plot? I was going down this predetermined road, a road where I had to lie in a report saying that Jangia had killed herself. I leaned back into the chair with weariness. I closed my heavy eyelids for a moment before bending down to pick up my shoulder bag and placing it on my lap. I pulled out a paper and placed it on Tan's desk. On the letterhead was a distinctive Garuda emblem, and below letters clearly addressed to Royal Thai Police Headquarters. Report of post-mortem examination.